Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back for my review of Black Clover chapter 284, which actually opened up in a really interesting way because we actually go back a few days prior to everyone showing up in the Spade Kingdom and the first gate opening up, and we actually get to see a little bit of the training that Noelle and the rest of the crew went through in the Heart Kingdom after they woke up in Elysia. And this is actually kind of cool in my opinion because I thought we weren't going to get to see any of the training that they went through because of the fact that we actually skipped over their training after they woke up and decided to train there to go back and focus mostly on Asta's training. So I was actually excited to see that we would actually get to see a little bit of it in this chapter. Even though we don't actually get to see the actual training process, we do get enough information about the kind of power that they're going to be training to access that can kind of infer exactly how much stronger they've become in the present day when we see them show up in the last chapter. Okay, so as soon as the chapter opens up, we actually get introduced to the guardian deity that Patrick mentioned in chapter, I want to say 263, was the last time we saw them. And he mentioned that the guardian deity of Elysia was actually named Dryad, and he pointed toward the tree, the giant tree in the middle of the entire encampment. And when he mentioned that guardian deity, I kind of figured that was going to be some kind of like ethereal being, some kind of like non-seen entity that kind of talks to them through the tree. And kind of that's the reason why the tree was so sacred, because it was their way of communicating to the deity. It was kind of their connection to it. But then we actually get to see her in the chapter in the flesh, or kind of in the flesh really, whatever she is. But we get introduced to her in the chapter, and she is literally like, her appearance looks just like Udine, but with plant version, and her personality seems very similar to Dorothy. And it kind of got me wondering, like if you were to ask me, I would definitely say that Dryad is definitely connected to Udine in some way. Like if you were to ask me, I would say that they are sisters or something. And her appearance in this chapter actually has me thinking about a few possibilities as to what exactly she is. Because on the one hand, she could just be a little Dryad, and if you don't know, Dryads are kind of like this Greek mythological creature that are connected to trees. They're basically nymphs who are connected to plant life and trees. And I'm thinking that if she is actually just the actual Dryad, and that's what Tabata's going with, that she's going to be, let me see, what was it called? A Hamadryad, which are basically just a type of Dryad that, and all Dryads are connected to their trees, but they're a type of Dryad that actually are very integral to the tree's life, and when their tree dies, they die as well. Which will explain why that sacred tree that she's connected to is so important, because if that tree were to die, then she would die as well. So that's one theory I have for what she could be. The other theory that I have is that we know that there are 4 great spirits in the Black Clover universe. I mean, as far as we know, there's only 4 of them. We don't know if there might be any more, but as of right now, we know 4. The fire, the water, the wind, and the earth. And we've met 3 of them so far. We met the water spirit, Udine. We met the fire spirit, Salamander. And we've obviously met the wind spirit, Belle. But we've yet to meet the great earth spirit. And I'm thinking that maybe Dryad actually is the great earth spirit. Because, like I said before, she has a strong similarity to Udine in appearance. Even though her personality is completely different from what we've seen of Udine, she definitely does resemble her in a lot of ways. So yeah, there's a real possibility that Dryad actually might be the great earth spirit. The only kind of rent I have for that theory, and again, we don't exactly know how the great spirits work just yet. We only just kind of know the basics of them. But based off the other 3 examples, it seems like in order for them to have a physical body in the human world, they have to be contracted to somebody. Like for example, when it comes to Udine, obviously she's contracted to Lord Pachika, and prior to that, she was contracted to all the queens of the Heart Kingdom. When it comes to Salamander, he's obviously contracted to right now Fugoyan, but prior to that, he was contracted to the elf version of Fauna. And then, of course, when it comes to Belle, obviously she's contracted to, and actually, Belle was actually the prime example of them not being able to have a physical body in the human world without being contracted to somebody. Because once Yuno was dying after he fought Xenon for the first time, she was actually starting to disintegrate and disappear from the human world because he was dying, and thus her contract with him was ending. Which, by the way, I actually just recently went back and read that chapter, and man, that still kind of brings me to tears seeing Belle just crying over Yuno's dead body or dying body. But you see what I'm getting at. In order for Dryad to be one of the great spirits, the great earth spirit, he would have to be contracted to somebody, and as far as we can tell, none of the elves that we know of have earth magic. Now, it could be one of 2 things. It could be that one of the elf kids have earth magic, and we just haven't been introduced to their abilities just yet, and that's who she's contracted to. But I'm guessing because of the fact that they are so young, that they're relatively new apparently to Elysia, because the last time we saw them, they were actually in the Clover Kingdom. So it's relatively new for them to be here in Elysia, so they couldn't be contracted to Dryad just yet because she's a guardian deity of this place. What I'm actually thinking is, maybe Dryad is actually contracted to the great tree that sits in the middle of Elysia that they actually kind of see as like this divine tree. I mean, technically trees are living creatures, so there is a possibility that she could be contracted to this great divine tree. and that's the reason why she's seen as the guardian deity of this place, because since the tree is so old, she's been contracted to it for a long time, and that's the reason why she protects Elysia. Now, we already knew that Dryad could see the future, because back in chapter 263, Patry mentions that she saw the future of the Heart Kingdom being attacked, so she sent them over there in order to help defend it. They just got there too late. But in this chapter, we actually get even more of her ability to see the future, because as soon as she starts talking to the humans, she mentions that the reason why she's actually going to be working with them is because she saw the future, and if the devils actually manage to escape, something bad is going to happen in Elysia. So that's the reason why she actually wants to work with them. Now, this actually leads to the big question of what's that bad thing that's going to happen in Elysia? Is it just that the devils are going to come here and destroy the place? Or is something actually tied to Elysia that's connected to the devils that she wants to stop? And if they escape, something bad is going to happen to Elysia. Is there some kind of like devil hidden inside of Elysia, or some kind of devil connected to Elysia that if it gets out, it's going to be bad for that place? Like seriously, I have so many questions from this one line alone. And it actually seems like Tabata kind of foreshadowing some future events, like maybe something's going to be happening in Elysia later on that they actually had to come back here in order to stop. Like during the arc at some point, you know, maybe he's going to get attacked by some kind of devil that's connected to Elysia or connected to Dryad in some way. And then maybe some of them are actually going to have to come back here, like maybe the elves, because we don't see any of the other elves besides Patry over in the Space Kingdom. So maybe the other elves are actually going to have to fight against this devil that actually showed up here, and this is actually going to be like a fight that we get to see them do. I actually would be interested in seeing that, but still, the question remains, what is this bad thing that's going to happen in Elysia if the devils get out? Now, once the training actually begins, we have Patry mention that when it comes to ultimate magic, originally it was an ability that only elves could use because their bodies were actually able to handle high capacities of mana. But because of the fact that the humans, you know, Noelle and them, and the Spirit Guardians all trained to use mana method, and actually are able to basically absorb large amount of mana from the natural air around them, because they've trained their bodies to do that method and to use those abilities of true magic, they basically have increased their body's capacities for mana to the point where they could potentially end up learning how to use ultimate magic. And that's the reason why he's actually agreeing to train them. Because normally, if a human were to actually try to attempt this, it seems from what he's saying that they would potentially end up dying. So this information is actually really cool to find out, because for one thing, this means that it's actually confirmed that the other characters that we haven't seen use true magic just yet have actually accessed true magic. That being, you know, Charmy. I don't think we've seen Mimosa use it, or Noelle. So basically all these other characters who train in the Heart Kingdom that we've yet to see actually use true magic have unlocked true magic. That's the only reason why they're actually able to use the ultimate magic, or trained to use the ultimate magic. Now, on top of that, this also means that only characters who trained in the Heart Kingdom had the potential to learn ultimate magic. Which means that we could potentially end up seeing Charlotte, Real, Infant Raw possibly also learn how to use ultimate magic as well in the near future. Obviously not during this arc, because there's no time for them to actually sit down and train, but potentially in the near future, they could potentially actually end up going to Elysia and train under the elves in order to learn how to use ultimate magic as well. And you know what? Speaking of true magic, we actually cut away from the flashback and actually go back to the present day in the Space Kingdom, and we get to see everyone except for, I want to say, Patry and Nero. I don't think we actually get to see either one of those two do anything. But every single person from the Heart Kingdom that showed up in the last chapter, we get to see them use true magic in this chapter to blow away all the devils that were attacking the city. Like literally every single one of them gets annihilated. And you know what? After seeing that scene of everyone using their true magic, I reacted the exact same way that Sally did in the next panel after that, where she's just basically fangirling over them using their new abilities. Now this is when we actually get to the kind of interesting part of the chapter, and this is actually really cool when it comes to the character development of Luck at least, and including not only Luck but all the other characters from the Heart Kingdom. And as we end up finding out that the devils they killed were low tier devils, and we'll get to that later in the video because I want to talk about that again. But we end up finding out that they were low tier devils. They were the weakest of the weak devils. And then immediately after we end up finding that out, we get introduced to the middle class devils who show up, and we end up going back again to the flashback of them training in the Heart Kingdom, or training in Elysia. And we have Dryad telling them that when it comes to the lower class devils, they should be no problem for them to take out. But when it comes to the middle and upper, there are going to be problems, and they're actually going to be a struggle for them to defeat. And of course, Luck being the character that he is, and you gotta love him for it, you tell him there's an opponent that he can't beat, he's going to immediately rush them and try to attack them and see if he actually can match up against them. And that's exactly what he does in this chapter. He just immediately rushes towards them, and I think there's like 5 or 6 of these mid-class devils, and he rushes all of them by himself in his brand new transformation, which actually looks sick as hell, and is actually his ultimate magic as well. And let me get the actual name for it real quick. So the name was actually Lightning Ultimate Magic Thunder Split Second War Demon. And again, this looks sick as hell. I can't explain exactly how cool Luck's new transformation looks. And it's actually even more impressive because it seemingly he actually cuts off the head of one of the devils. So yeah, that's a mid-class devil that Luck killed in a split second. Not only did he kill it, he embarrassed it. Like, he actually took his hand off. When the devil actually reaches out to try to attack Luck, he takes off the hand in a split second before the devil can even react. And then as we see at the end of the chapter, he is behind all the devils, holding one of their heads. And we actually can see the silhouette of one of the devils with their head cut off in the background before it actually falls down. This shows exactly how strong Luck's become, and if Luck's become this powerful, that means the rest of them, including Noelle, who is already stronger than Luck, has become immensely more powerful, which means that when we actually get the reunion, or the rematch between Noelle and Vanica, it is going to be intense, because now that Vanica has a power-up, and Noelle has a crazy power-up as well, who knows what's going to happen? We don't know exactly how this fight's going to go down now. I mean, obviously, Noelle's going to end up winning, but we don't know exactly how strong she is compared to Vanica's new power-up. So we don't know if, this new power-up, her ultimate magic, is going to be enough to basically defeat Vanica by herself, or if she's going to need backup. And I'll be honest, as much as I want to see a one-on-one rematch between Noelle and Vanica, I feel like in order for us to see the full potential of Nero and Mimosa's ultimate magic, we have to see them fighting alongside her against Vanica. I feel like that's going to be the only opponents that actually can push them to using their full potential of this magic. Unless they end up fighting against a high-tier devil by themselves, which, I mean, on the one hand would be cool as hell, on the other hand, I don't want to wish that on them because we've seen what they can do so far, and these high-tier devils seem to be a little bit out of their league, even with the ultimate magic. But again, we don't know exactly how much stronger these characters are besides Luck. We've seen that Luck can actually speed blitz a mid-class devil by himself. We don't know exactly what the power difference is between a mid-class devil and a high-tier devil though. So we don't know exactly how he stacks up against one of them. But we do know that they're actually going to stand a much better chance now than they did before. Oh, and speaking of the devils, I'm actually really glad Tabata gave us this classification of the mid-tier devils in this chapter, because now this actually makes a lot more sense into my head as to why those demons or those creatures we saw them defeat in the beginning of the chapter are called devils, because prior to that, I felt like they should be classified more as demons than devils, because they look nothing like the devils we've seen so far, like Dryad or Lucifero or the twins that showed up out of the first gate. But now that we had the classification of mid-tier devils, it actually makes a lot more sense. Because from what it seems like, the lower tier devils have a more demonic creature look to them. Like, they don't actually look like devils, they actually look like demons compared to the devils we've seen prior to that. And then when we get to the mid tier devils, we see that even though they actually do still look like demonic creatures, they do have some humanoid features to them. So they are starting to look closer to like the devils that we've seen before, like Dryad. And then honestly, once we get to the higher tier devils like Dryad and Lucifero and all the other ones we've seen so far, obviously they have a more humanoid appearance. So it seems like when it comes down to the tiers of devils, basically if you look more like a demonic creature, you're a low tier devil, and obviously your power level will basically represent that. And then as you go up, you will start to look more humanoid. And you know what? This actually means that Lieb actually isn't a low tier devil. This means that he actually has to be a high tier one, because he has a more humanoid appearance like Dryad in him. If he actually was a low tier devil, he would have a more demonic looking appearance, kind of like the ones we saw in the last chapter. Or if he was a mid-class devil, he would look more like the ones we saw in this chapter. So this means that he actually has to be a high tier devil. He was just a high tier devil born without any mana. So wow. I'm actually going to have to do a video on this later on, but yeah, this is actually kind of exciting news, finding out that Lieb actually is a high tier devil. Anyway, getting back to the chapter, after Luck cuts the head off of one of the mid-tier devils, we actually cut over to the castle, and we see that it's both burning and freezing at the same time, which obviously means that the little phenomena are using their magic. And when we cut to the inside of the castle, we actually get to see that, and I'm actually kind of upset that we actually see this in this chapter, we see that Nock is in a very, very, very bad situation where he is basically skewered through by icicles. And this is actually what I was a little bit afraid of that would happen, because after we had in the last chapter where Gimodo talked about how Nock was in a situation where he can't help them out by transporting them over to the Space Kingdom, it made me think that we'd actually cut over back to him and skip past whatever his plan was to get past the two devils and go to Morris, and when we see him, he'd be on the cusp of dying, and it seems like that's what's happening in this chapter. But you know what, I really hope I am wrong, because I would love to see in the next chapter us going back in time a little bit to see exactly what Nock's plan with Pumede was in order to get past the devils and get to Morris, because he mentioned something about dying, and a lot of people theorize that because Pumede is a cat devil, and because Nock is using the traits of their animal to basically enhance his magic, people think that somehow in some way Nock is going to be able to have multiple lives through Pumede. And I'm wondering exactly what kind of magic that would actually look like. Like, what would that magic look like? How would he use that ability? And I'm really excited to see that and what Tabata comes up with for that. And on top of that, I just really want to see exactly what his plan was. Like, what was he planning on doing to get past Lil Phanama to get to Morris? And once he got to Morris, what was he planning on doing to Morris? Like, was he going to kill him right off the bat? Was he going to basically just transfer Morris away? I really want to see exactly what Nock was planning on doing and how it went wrong. But anyway guys, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, share this video everywhere you can, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.